Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out what happened to the first British subculture, dandy, skiffle, and rock and roll.
What led to the death of the first post-war British subculture of dandies, riots, and rock and roll? In this video, we're going to examine how the very first youth subculture arose as a reaction to post-war Britain, and why it became despised and died off. The subculture that even the Beatles emulated in the early formation of the band.
And John was always keen to get out of his house because of his Aunt Mimi was kind of very stern and strict, and she embarrassed him. I remember going to John's house once when I first had met him. I was still at the Institute, and we were trying to look like teddy boys, which was like that style in those days. And I must have looked pretty good because she was like, she didn't like me at all. She was really shocked. She said, look at him, you know, who is this? Bringing this boy around to this house. You look at him, he looks dreadful, like a teddy boy. And he'd just say, shut up, Murray, shut up.
Whoa. Wow, if she only knew who he was. That's hilarious. John was telling his aunt to shut up. I wonder how she reacted to that. That hair, y'all. How do you even do that? What does that look like? I can't see myself. Huh? No. Way off. Maybe if I... Look at that. Okay. Stand by. Does that do it? Wait. I can use the headphones to keep it in place. I'm going bald, y'all. Is that? Hey! Alright. Let's see how well this holds up.
During World War II, the civilian death toll rose to 70,000 in Britain, largely due to German bombing rage during the Blitz. 40,000 civilians died in the 7-month period between September 1940 and May 1941, almost half of them in London.
September to May. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. That's 8 months, y'all. 40,000 people in 8 months. 40,000 people in 8 months. That's 5,000 people a month. I feel like I could have done that in my head, but I'm too lazy. 5,000 people a month. That's 166.666667 people a day. That's a lot. Wow. Look at that. Oh my God. Were they bombing them with buses? Wow. Big hole in the ground. That'll do it. What does that do to a kid? You know? A little impressionable kid. How does that shape the kid's worldview? That's got to be traumatic. They probably disassociate, or I don't know. So they're saying this subculture was came out of that in a way. Well, this hair. This hair is anti-bomb hair, y'all.
During the Blitz, children were evacuated to the countryside, while the people endured tight rationing due to severe food shortages. The trauma of the war did not break the British spirit, but rather strengthened it. However, the devastation and challenges faced by the country continued to affect people well after the war ended.
Like this kid here, y'all. This poor kid. What is, like... That must be his pop here, because he looks the same. This poor kid.
Post-war Britain was harsh, but in different and unexpected ways from the war. As food rationing continued into the 1950s, the rebuilding of infrastructure dragged on, with housing shortages and economic instability. So how did the British youth coming of age escape the devastation of their war-torn and traumatized country? Music and fashion brought them together, with the birth of the first subculture, known as the Teddy Boys. In the midst of all this devastation, there were still young people trying to find their place in the world. Still teenage hormones raging on. Still young people looking for a purpose. Their future was uncertain as their parents tried to create a normal post-war life, leaving the memories of the war behind. And in the midst of the rebuilding, American rock and roll had come onto the scene. Combining the dreariness of post-war Britain, along with this never-before-heard music on the radio, with young people hungry for some excitement, this new subculture spread quickly. Young people were longing for something to happen, longing for an escape from their dull existence as they walked past bomb-damaged buildings that were still awaiting repair or demolition.
That must have taken forever.
Newspapers began reporting on a trend in young men's attire.
So, wow, food rationing kept going on into the 50s. The end of the world saw additional cuts. The end of the war saw additional cuts. Bread, which was never rationed during wartime, was put on the ration in 1946. It was not until the early 1950s that most commodities came off the ration. Meat was the last item to be de-rationed, and food rationing ended completely in 1954. Gosh, where do you even begin? Y'all, this is reminding me of all these hurricanes in America. We just, I don't know when this will come out, but just last night there was Hurricane Milton swept through Florida, and a couple weeks before that, Helene, and a couple weeks before that, Debbie. They're just getting pounded with hurricanes, and it looks a lot like this. It looks like a bomb went off. Many bombs. I mean, places are just devastated. Floridians need to start listening to skiffle music, is what I'm trying to say.
Around 1953, newspapers began reporting on a trend in young men's attire they referred to as the New Edwardian look. The look was created by Savile Row and tried to recapture the optimism of the Edwardian era. The look was inspired by Edwardian dandies, who placed importance on their appearance and leisurely hobbies. King Edward was known as the leader of the fashionable elite. The Edwardian period is sometimes portrayed as a romantic golden age of long summer afternoons and garden parties, basking in a sun that never set on the British Empire. The New Edwardian was the look of the middle class reacting to the government-imposed austerity. However, the working-class teenagers took the look and made it their own.
Okay, hang on. I just want to see. This is fascinating. I didn't know that came from Edwardian. When was the Edwardian era? The Edwardian era corresponds to the reign of King Edward VII in Great Britain, right? Whose short-lived governance 1901 to 1910. So this was happening in the 50s. The Edwardian era was the 1900s, 40 years before. What goes around comes around, huh? And so the teenagers were like, yeah, we like that, but let's do it our own way.
These teens began to identify with each other based on their style, their choice of music, and eventually dance. This new emerging youth culture became popular right before rock and roll became popular. The two would eventually intersect and sweep across Britain as...
I was gonna say, like, the style is very similar. Like, the hair, like the pompadour thing, it's similar. The suits, same kind of suits. So whenever they saw American rock and roll icons, they're probably like, yes, that's it. They're very similar.
The two would eventually intersect and sweep across Britain as the very first youth culture known as Teddy Boys. The name Teddy Boy was coined around September 1953 when a Daily Express newspaper headline shortened Edward to Teddy and coined the term Teddy Boy.
Okay. Teddy Boy comes from Edward. See, I thought the Teddy Boy style was like leather jackets, leather pants, like bikers, a little bit. But these guys are all wearing suits. Maybe it leads to the biker stuff. Let's see.
Teddy Boys altered the Edwardian suits with American Western accessories. Maverick Slim Jim neckties and silk pattern waistcoats became part of this new trend.
Okay, that's odd, isn't it? Those Maverick ties? Wasn't that like an old Wild West thing? First of all, I didn't know it was called a Maverick tie. I remember there was a show called Maverick, and he wore one of those. It was like a Western thing. Okay, interesting. All right.
Slim Jim neckties and silk pattern waistcoats became part of this new trend that British young men embraced. In addition to the jacket, most Teddy Boys wore something called drainpipe trousers, a type of trouser leg that was straight down, not skin tight, but also not overly baggy. worn high-waisted to show off their socks. They had seen photos of American young men wearing what were known as zoot suits.
Yeah.
And in those days, everything American was cool, so they tried to emulate it. In regards to footwear, the Teddy Boys had three favourites to choose from: highly polished Oxfords, chunky brogues, and crepe-soled shoes, often suede, also known as brothel creepers. Once the working class embraced often suede, also
brothel creepers. Brothel creepers. Oh, it's even in the ad. That was the official name. I gotta just Google brothel creepers and see what comes up. It's a creative name. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Double sole creepers. Why were they called brothel creepers? Thick crepe soles, often in combination with suede uppers. A version of this style of shoe became popular with World War II soldiers in North Africa, who adopted suede boots with hard-wearing crepe rubber. Writing in The Observer in 1991, John Ayer put the origin of the name brothel creeper to the wartime years. The Smithsonian suggests the crepe in the thick sole may have given the shoes the title creeper. Okay. It may also be associated with a Ken Macintosh dance tune popular in 1953 called The Creep. The shoes were taken up by the Teddy Boys along with drain-pipe trousers worn with exposed socks and draped jackets. Oh, Puma Creepers by Rihanna. In 2015, Puma and Rihanna launched a collaborative shoe line called the Puma Creeper, which won an award for Shoe of the Year. 2016, the Puma Creeper. Oh, okay, all right. They got thick soles. Brothel Creeper. I love that.
Polished Oxfords, chunky brogues, and crepe-soled shoes, often suede, also known as brothel creepers. Once the working class embraced the Edwardian style, the middle class rejected it. This newspaper article cites the reaction. The Teddy Boy is a uniquely British phenomenon and predates the introduction of American rock and roll music into Britain in late...
Hang on, I just have to read some of this article here. The style the Teddy Boys killed. What has happened to the Edwardian suit? Not so many months ago, fashion writers predicted that men would soon be wearing drainpipe trousers, jackets buttoning high up to the neck, and turn-back cuffs on their sleeves. Men about town wearing this fashion of 2 or 3 generations ago were usually photographed in curly-brim bowlers? Bowlers? Today, no well-dressed man would be seen in such an outfit. The idea has been killed, stone dead by youths with more money than dress sense. They smothered the style with all the exaggerations they could think of. Colored velvet collars and cuffs, trousers that were so tight they couldn't sit down in them, belts on the back of their jackets, long, narrow ties like bootlaces. Okay.
And predates the introduction of American rock and roll music into Britain in late 1955 by Bill Haley and his Comets. However, one fact is clear, that when rock and roll did
that looks like Ringo.
Like a thunderbolt in 1955, the music would quickly become adopted by Britain's Teddy Boys, and from that point onwards, the style and the music became inseparable.
That's John Lennon. Yo, that song, Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley, caused riots in Germany. People freaked out. It was like punk music to them. They started a mosh pit. I would love to go back in time and make heavy metal or some kind of music and see what people would think, you know? Or play some hip-hop for them. See what they would think. Their brains would explode. Or they would suddenly start vomiting or something, I think.
Although Teddy Boys became associated with rock and roll music, prior to the advent of that genre, Teddy Boys also listened and danced to R&B, jazz and skiffle music.
People are saying you're keeping them awake at all hours of the morning, slamming car doors, singing, playing guitars. Is there any truth in that?
No, not at all.
Well, what happens?
We're usually too tired to make a noise at all of any sort.
How long do you play at a time?
3 to 4 hours sometimes.
Pretty exhausting?
Yes.
Absolutely whacked?
Absolutely.
I've heard someone say your music is pagan. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's at all. I think it's...
What do you get out of it? What do you get out of it?
Well, we enjoy it. We enjoy it very much.
Express yourself?
Yes.
And you're going to carry on playing Skiffle for years and years and years?
As long as people still enjoy it.
I don't like this interviewer. Just saying that. This young lady held her own. I respect her for that. Good work. Good work.
They had 3 main dances, including the jive, the bop, and the creep. The well-known dance, the creep, a slow shuffle, became identified with teddy boys.
The creep.
British rock and roll artists such as Tommy...
Yeah, bunny hop. How to dance the bunny hop. Oh yeah, the jive. I don't know if that's it. The creep? I guess that's the same thing. This guy's gonna dance the creep.
Ow. Ow, right? All I'm doing is having that knee go out and my heel's kind of popping up a little bit.
Is that the same thing? I don't think that's the same thing. The creep dance. Is that it? I don't think that's it. Charleston I've heard of. That's yeah. Yeah, I thought that was like a 1920s thing. But I guess it came back. Hokey pokey, we all know what that's about.
The well-known dance, the creep, a slow shuffle, became identified with teddy boys. British rock and roll artists such as Tommy Steele, Marty Wilde, Cliff Richard, Dickie Pride, and Joe Brown became popular with the teddy boy culture, as did the early Merseybeat scene. The Beatles emulated the teddy boy style in the early formation of the band.
Who's this guy on the right? Having a Coke. Who's that guy?
Paul McCartney will go on to write a song called Teddy Boy, which was originally intended to be a Beatles song, but was eventually dismissed until his first solo album. Which do you prefer? The Tony Curtis American hairstyle became a popular hairstyle for teddy boys. As they walked through the streets, past areas that were still undergoing reconstruction and redevelopment, they bonded over fashion and rock and roll music.
Okay, let me just check on the pompadour. How are we? Oh, it's fallen a bit. This is, I feel like it goes, oh my god. It goes up on the sides, right? And down in the front. I can't even see. It's more like that. We're bringing it back, y'all. We're bringing it back. Okay. Just so I can see. Let's try. Oh my god. Hey. This works. If I could just get it to stay. Oh, okay. Okay, if I can get my headphones to kind of like clamp down on it. Maybe it can stay. How's that? We'll go with it. This is it. This is as close as I can get. Okay. Tell me more about Tony Curtis's hair.
Oftentimes they gathered together at pubs, coffee bars, and dance halls inside churches. Sometimes meeting up at bombed locations, still waiting to be rebuilt.
Wow. Oh my god.
Whatever may be said about this place, it obviously fulfills a desperate need. The bleak, bare rooms were crowded with almost 400 teenagers, pathetically anxious to have a good time.
In a broken down building.
Well, I'm not running against everybody in search, you know. You wear what you like here. Well, you go down the YMCA and everybody gives you dirty looks. Look at the clothes you wear, see?
Huh.
You're very well dressed. Why do you think you do get these black looks?
Well, I think it's just a lot of people, you know, jealous, the grown-ups. I think that's mainly one of the reasons.
So because you're more smarter dressed than they are?
Well, we would think so, but how they taught, that's better than us.
I'll go with the teddy boy than an ordinary boy.
Teddy boy any day.
Teddy boy any day?
Please.
What do you mean the weather gets better in the summer?
Well, I should still come to the coffee bar every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday.
Every night?
Yes, been every night since it's been open.
Well, why do you do that?
I think it's the only place in town where you don't have to pay to go in. If you go in a cafe, you have to pay to drink or something like that. If they do darts, you'll have to pay, but here you don't have to pay to come in. I think that if I had to pay, not many people would come.
But when the weather's better and it's hot, you don't have to pay to go out in the country, do you?
Ah, but you see, if you go in the country, people get to mischief and things like that, and nothing much to do in the country. Yet if you come here, you can dance and talk to your friends and everything.
Good atmosphere.
Teddy boys did not know what the future held for them, but at least they had the escape in their newfound acceptance into the teddy boy subculture. Girls eventually joined in on the fun, and soon teddy girls gained popularity through fashion and love of music.
I've never heard of a teddy girl. That's way ahead of its time. Right? The style subculture that time forgot. On reflection, the pairing of the aristocratic flamboyancy of an Edwardian gent with the rebellious attitude of American rock and roll shouldn't have worked, but it did. Also known as Judy's, created a strangely alluring visual identity. They're having a good time, smoking a cigarette, chilling out in the broken down building, hanging out on the rubble. Wow. Teddy girls.
Teddy girls, also called Judies, wore draped jackets, pencil skirts, rolled up jeans, flat shoes, tailored jackets with velvet collars, and straw boater hats. Although some girls were on the fence about this new trend, as one writes to the Daily Mail about her dilemma. I'm 17, and what is generally termed a nice girl. I don't smoke, drink, or swear. I like dancing,
sounds fun,
but my main interests are outdoor activities. Like other girls of my age, I want a boyfriend, but it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Yet teddy girls who dress and behave cheaply have boyfriends galore. Is it worth being a sweet, old-fashioned girl anymore? The Daily Mirror offered a startlingly unsympathetic response. Apparently, miss, you've got to rock and roll with the times. Teddy boys were looked down upon as hoodlums by many parents, authorities, and the middle class. Eventually, the violence made its way into this new subculture. There were several notable riots associated with the Teddy Boys in the 1950s. When a teenager, John Beckley, was murdered by a Teddy Boy gang known as the Ploughboys in July 1953 after a fight that started on Clapham Common, the Daily Mirror's headline, "Flick Knives, Dance Music and Edwardian Suits," linked criminality to clothes worn by Teddy Boys. Then, the 1958 Notting Hill riots included working-class youth who clashed with immigrants living in the area. The British Nationality Act of 1948 had given...
The what? Notting Hill riots. Following the Second World War, the British government began to encourage mass immigration from various territories to fill shortages in the labor market. A mob of 300 to 400 white people were seen on Bramley Road attacking the houses of West Indian residents. The disturbances, rioting, and attacks continued every night until September 6th. Wait, oh, okay. So it started on August 29th. So it was like a week? Oh my gosh. Ugh, race riots. Wow.
The British Nationality Act of 1948 had given citizenship of the UK and its colonies to all people living in the British Empire, bringing many new people to England. The disturbances, rioting and fights continued every night from August 29th until September 6th. The Metropolitan Police arrested more than 140 people during the period of unrest. Some lazy reporters used the term Teddy Boy to describe any young working-class person involved in the riot. While some could genuinely be labelled as such, it was not a Teddy Boy-led fight. The press had a field day with this, and anyone labelled a Teddy Boy was considered someone causing serious trouble. The pressure to avoid anyone who was associated with this subculture mounted. This bad press, combined with the trend naturally giving way to new styles, began to see the subculture slowly die off. Although not everyone loved the Teddy Boys together with the riots. One Baptist minister from Leamington went a little further, however, offering an open invitation to 100 Teddy Boys and their girlfriends to a church social, a Teddy Boys picnic. Although behaviour was a little unusual for a church event. Cigarettes were being passed round during the hymns, girls sat on their Teddy Boy boyfriends' laps, and pop songs were sung on the porch beforehand. The event, according to the Birmingham Daily Post, was a great success. One church worker described the guests as the nicest young folk you could hope to meet. Some of the Teds were no angels, that is true, and occasional gang fighting could get rough at times, but they were certainly not as bad as the media painted them.
Well, my opinion of the Teddy Boys, they're all right. They're not so bad as they're painted. Don't believe in all the press talk you read about. It's a build-up for the papers. The Teddy Boy, today, in my opinion, is he gets good money and he dresses himself accordingly. I have no trouble with them in here. They come in here for a drink. I've told them they're not allowed to drink intoxicating liquors for the simple reason I can't discern who's 20 and who's 16.
One notable original Ted, Breathless Dan Coffey from South Wales, was largely responsible for not only keeping the movement going into the 60s, but for introducing rockabilly music into Britain from the southern states of America. In the late 60s, there was a second generation of Teddy Boys who discovered rockabilly. In the 1970s, as a reaction to punk, another generation of Teds appeared. They were
went through the
referred
70s?
to by the older generation as plastics. Rockabilly became the mainstream music of the Teddy Boys into the 70s.
Okay.
When the Teds began to experience a rebirth in the early 1970s, Vivienne Westwood started selling draped jackets and creepers in her shop Let It Rock on King's Road. And Ringo Starr played a Teddy Boy in 1973 for the film That'll Be the Day. A former Ted had this to say about the Teddy Boy subculture. Yeah, I like causing trouble. It's the Teddy Boy in me. I used to be a Teddy Boy. Feeling slightly inferior and wanting to cause a bit of bother and get some action going on in the room rather than get bored stiff.
Doesn't seem to belong to the world that I live in. You seem to be living in a dream. I've noticed this about the boy ever since we returned to London, just after the war. During the war, he was like other children. He was evacuated. But he was perhaps more fortunate than others, and he was evacuated to a place where he had woods and fields and he could run about free all day. And then he returned to London. And I noticed the look of puzzlement on the boys' faces when he saw the streets, pavements, houses. He looked like a trapped animal. I think that's the impression that I get about that boy, that he is a trapped animal, trying to find somebody else. He just is a dog.
I'm surprised by this guy's comments, because at first I thought he would say bad stuff, but it was actually kind of positive, like very understanding and empathetic. And this is reminding me of in the 50s, like post-war America. There was a boom of children after the war because soldiers came home to their wives and celebrated and made babies. And there were a lot of babies, and it created the boomer generation. And I think the boomer generation, when they became teenagers in the mid-50s, like, you know, late 50s, suddenly teenagers were driving commercialism. It was the first time in the country that young people had money to spend and changed commerce. What am I trying to say? They affected the economy so much that they became a powerful force, and that's kind of what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing a different version of that here. Wow, and how strange that must be to be a young person. The war's happening, bombings are happening in London, so your folks send you out to the country to go to school far away. The war happens, and then you come back to London, and it's just devastated. All these places you used to know are gone. There's rubble everywhere. That must be traumatizing.
While the Teddy Boy subculture began to die out in the late 1950s, another subculture would begin to rise up. We will get into that in the next video.
Oh.
If you enjoy learning about music and culture from the past, be sure to like and subscribe so that we know what our viewers find interesting and can make more.
All right. Is that it? Oh, great. Yeah. Y'all be sure to go to Freewheeling and like and subscribe. Give them some views. How did the Pompadour hold up? How are we doing? I don't know. That's fine. We'll leave it there. So, wow. I'm surprised that it came... I'm surprised by the Edwardian influence. I'm surprised by the Edwardian influence. And man, if the older generation had issues with the Teddy Boy style, I can only imagine the issues they must have had with the style that came up in the 60s. These people are sleeping in the subway. Little kids wearing gas masks. Amazing. Yeah, I'm curious to know what style came after this. Was it hippies? Let's look on their channel and just see. What is the next one?
In 1965, the world of music was on the brink of a revolution.
Well, they're showing the Beatles, so it must be something about that. Well, yeah, y'all, and if you made it this far in the video, give me a like and subscribe. Help me out. I'd like to say thanks to my patrons. Thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later.